Welcome to another episode of Consensus Unreality. This episode is presented in its entirety on patreon.com/consensusunreality. For just $5 a month, you can access our full episode archive, tons of regular exclusive episodes, written content, and more. So check that out at patreon.com/consensusunreality. Thanks for listening, as always, and have a happy and healthy New Year.
For the heat. That's a heater. That's a sun simulator. Exactly. Sun dog. Sun simulator.
Check it out, my friends. Check it out. What is that? Check that out. Interesting. Check that out. Holy smokes, where'd this come from? Check that out. Oh, wow.
There's this other stuff up there. It looks like it come out of a mattress, but it didn't. And there is some kind of little insect things. And back in there, there's these things. That weird looking cloud, like it's got a hole in it. They want you to think that. It's not. Some other stuff going on we don't know about, of course. But people, you can tell people about them stories and they think, oh, well, it kind of, it's not comprehensible, Like the time I saw two portals up there and now, these things is getting a little more active that I'm out here. What's that got to do with things? Oh, that shattered souls, broken hearts. What is that? What is that? Is it going in my house through my chimney? Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Beloved Mother, Father God, mighty I am presence, great ascended and angelic host and great cosmic beings, and the mighty I am presence of all mankind and those who are waiting for embodiment at this time, and the entire kingdom of light and love from the great central sun. Please send trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of oceans and oceans and oceans and oceans and oceans of the highest frequency of love and the highest form of light and the sacred fires of purification and the violet flames and the platinum light and positive life force energy and the green flames and the blue flames and the rose pink flames and all the great flames and the miracles that you can send directly into the energy stream of harp and directly into all the harp installations on earth, so that all the harp installations on earth would give healing and balance to all life on earth rather than harm any life on earth. And we ask that this action be sustained until full perfection is restored and all life is ascended and free. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Welcome to another...
Oh, you're recording. Sorry.
Yeah, good job. Pro podcaster over here. Welcome to another episode of Consensus Unreality. We are joined here tonight by Carmelo Pampillonio, talking about Apophenic Realism. Going to be talking about a bunch of things. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
I think what sparked this, we've kind of known each other and been conversing about sound and music things for a handful of years. And then, I saw some project you were doing a few years ago that was pooling and sending messages to the moon. Is that right? Through a radio tower. Yeah. And now you're writing about conspiracy culture. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to discuss these things and everything else. So where should we start? You want to talk about this apophenic realism a bit?
Yeah. I guess. First of all, it's a shame that we didn't get the first little initial conversation recorded. We were talking about hidden castles and Freemason tunnels and wolves, but maybe we'll
loop back
to
there.
that.
Yeah.
Just a funny context of for the listeners of us switching gears. But Apophenic Realism. That was this project that I've been working on for. I want to say it started in the beginning, like right in January of this year, 2023. I had just gotten home from spending the winter in Finland, and I had this. I'd had a number of like brush-ins with some deeper online conspiracy theory communities, and basically I started this project where I kind of embedded myself really, really deeply within these like online epistemic subcultures to a deeper degree than what I usually am. I've always been one who's been very interested and sympathetic to conspiracy theories, especially ones that have been kind of they've had their genesis on the internet or have spread via the internet. I think that those are some really interesting ones, and they kind of take a different turn and stylistic flavor than other conspiracy theories in the past and in the pre-internet time, if that makes sense. But basically the specifics of this embedding myself into these communities was I wanted to specifically get into like the band community. So people, content creators, documentary makers, video makers, theorists, if you will, who have been banned or censored, and they've kind of had to navigate outside of like the more popular discourse and popular platforms and everything like that to continue their own research and their own, media production, spreading. Sometimes that takes the form of like community building. Sometimes it's like proselytizing and propaganda. Sometimes it's like speculative research, and I don't care who's listening, if anyone. And I was just interested in all of that. I had this sense right in the beginning. I guess rather I should word this. I've known for a while that media plays such a central role in conspiracy theories, and always has, probably to my best guess is what it seems. But specifically in the context of what I'm talking about here, of like internet age conspiracy theories, media has such a central role to it. And as an artist, a predominantly sound artist, I thought it would be a really interesting project to go into these communities and do this like blind media survey of like these conspiracy topographies across the different websites. Like Rockfin was a huge platform. Like, what is it? Banned videos. It's this huge network with Alex Jones and the bunch and all these some of them are very genuine, and quite a few of them are grifters, kind of like offshoots of InfoWars and everything like that.
Right.
And following these links and cryptic messages of things that I would see in like YouTube comment sections, and just going through, making accounts, and watching videos of these, and kind of downloading content, and then also having conversations, like following the trails to who's making these documentaries, who was pushed off of Instagram, who was pushed off of YouTube. you guys might remember like the documentary Zeitgeist or Loose Change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like we're all of that generation. I was in middle school when those came out, and they really affected me, I guess, at the time. So I was looking for people like that, like independent creators and conspiracy theorists who were just weaving their narratives and everything. And I got in touch with a good number of popular ones. Like my favorite person to talk to was Mark Sargent, who's really famous in the flat Earth community. He's probably the most well-known flat Earth theorist that I can think of. There's a really great documentary with him that it portrays him in a rather generous, I guess, light compared to some other stuff on Netflix called Beyond the Curve or Behind the Curve. I can't remember.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I really like him. And he was one of the most open and kind people. So I basically just wanted to reach out to all these content creators and say, what specifically has gotten banned? Can I see it? Can you share it with me? And I want to do a media survey. And instead of creating a sound composition based off of like aesthetic choices and like a compositional like hierarchy based on like taste or whatever, I just wanted to like follow the hyperlinks after hyperlink after hyperlink, kind of one after another, and let that unfold. But I quickly realized that the best way to do that, I think the most interesting way, was to acknowledge what is largely considered to be the first conspiracy theory that like originated and spread through the internet, which was the chemtrail conspiracy theory, starting in like 1996, super early. And that really like acted as like the guide stone for how people would absorb and propagate, and how popular media platforms and public figures would in turn like react to or try to push back against some sort of conspiracy narrative that spreads extremely, rapidly with the internet. So the majority of videos and media that I sourced for Apophenic Realism, which takes the form of 2 audio surveys and an essay, like a short piece of text. The main material behind that are chemtrail searchers, like chemtrailers. They're out in the field recording, documenting, and explaining and sharing and asking questions too to like other people in their community, and they're recording chemtrails in the sky. So it's really interesting also as someone who has a background in field recording, where it's just this plethora of really interesting homemade, home-baked videos of people just with their cameras to the sky, and you never see anyone, you never see their feet. It's just you hear them walking through grass, walking through gravel, leaves, snow, whatever, and you just hear their thoughts, stream of consciousness, or if they're the silent type, you just hear their breathing. And so I wasn't really going after ones, collecting ones for this piece that incorporated like background music. I mainly wanted to hear people's thoughts or reactions and see what kind of common threads might arise if I just string them together following like this user's connected to this user, or they respect this user, or because they tag each other a lot. It's a very participatory community, and that's another thing that I really appreciate about the conspiracy world, and I guess worlds plural.
Yeah. Is it like a ethnographical work? Is that how you think of it as well? And like, are you looking at it as like you're trying to sort of map these connections, or is it more for the media aspect of it?
A little bit of both, but the ethnographic part is a good point, and that kind of surfaced like unexpectedly. And by that I mean when I first started collecting these chemtrailer videos, and that's the majority too. There's also 5G tower hunters,
Yeah.
disclosure people, like, they're exposing whatever types of truth, but it largely, mostly all relates back to chemtrails and contrails. But yeah, it did turn into like an ethnographic thing, because I realized that although there are different camps of thought for these people who believe that the government or some elite powers that be are using airplanes or some sort of optical illusion that makes us think that they're airplanes in the sky, and they're using that as a basis of pollution, chemical dissipation that induces mind control or infertility or geoengineering or anything like that. There's different schools of thought as to what exactly is going on, but there's so many common talking points and terminologies and language that I wasn't expecting so much to be shared as I navigated through even that one particular community, if that makes sense. So there really was kind of this like surprising personalized, like ethnographic revelation, if you will, of how connected it was. And it makes sense because they were pushed off of everything else. And there are chemtrail videos and others on YouTube remaining, of course. But the ones that I was going after and was interested in were people who, for some reason or another, were tying in other things that eventually got them banned or flagged enough. They were kind of fed up and they just went where all their friends were going and everything. And so these are people who really dedicate their life to these types of like exposure endeavors and expeditions. And some of the channels had like 10,000 uploads, and they would go out multiple times a day. And so that was kind of shocking still, to see how so much shared terminology and thought was linking all of these.
How big
Is
would
it
you
like
say
a mystical thing? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just like, how big would you say the chemtrails community is, do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because you'd watch some of these and you'd see the creators or like the communities of uploaders, people who film, and they would have like thousands of videos on their channel. And some of these channels were kind of acting as like central hubs or nodes where they got really popular maybe a number of years ago, or they had, if anyone has a really high quality camera, their channel is going to get a lot of extra views and attention. It's going to percolate around that channel. And so that becomes another central hub. Or if they have a strong personality, that is probably even more important, honestly, for attracting and retaining viewers. But I can't honestly say, because I can tell you from what I've seen over the years and the 6 months that I was embedding myself in these communities and talking to them, is like, for the chemtrailing and contrailing community alone, I mean, there's like thousands of channels on YouTube. It's almost endless. It was like stressful to like navigate and prioritize which ones to kind of go through. But once you get off that platform, there's just as many, if not more. And then each of their videos, like some channels would maybe get like 10, 12 views per video, and then others will be getting like 130,000 views. And they're not using keywords or linking it to something in pop culture or that would show up in like a top search thing. YouTube has also changed their algorithm after 2015 with the whole Pizzagate QAnon
so they just
thing.
backline it. Yeah, right. Yeah, it
takes forever to find these things too. You have to trace through the communities and the peoples and the comment sections, and so hundreds of thousands of views on a lot of these and thousands of channels. It's quite extensive. And of course, the real question on my mind during all of that is, what did they do to get banned?
Right.
And what other conspiracies or interests or beliefs might these people hold? And they would quite often let you know the more you stick around and listen.
I mean,
crazy.
It is like, it's platformed by, there's that one dude on Joe Rogan who's like obsessed with chemtrails, right? He's like, his number two, Eddie, I think his name's like Eddie Bravo or something, is like,
I know that name. Yeah.
oh, he's talking about chemtrails.
Is
and
he like
stuff.
a fighter or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He was like an MMA fighter, and like, you know, I'm not a Rogan listener, but I can still parse out that like anytime that dude gets a chance, he's bringing up chemtrails. So I mean, that's a pretty big platform. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I'd have to say maybe around like 2009 or something, when I was like getting like a David Icke book from like Barnes and Noble, you know, and like chemtrails at the same time, like, and Morgellons is something that like, is that strange.
I love that
medical conspiracy that people have tied in to chemtrails as well.
Totally,
are you familiar with that? It's like plastic like growths.
It's very like out of a scanner darkly almost. Like I think people diagnosed it as like a like medical delusion, like a hallucination. Like I think they tried to like actually explain it psychologically, but people are still, you can still find videos. I was really into watching those for a little while.
Yeah, so it is like a legacy online conspiracy. I could see what you're saying there. Have you, when you are like entering these, let's say, reality tunnel, right? Like the Robert Anton Wilson thing, when you kind of like get into like, you know, researching one topic like that, like chemtrails, are you starting to like agree a little bit? Is the potion kind of like working on you a little bit? Because I feel like now when I log on to x.com, it's like this website that used to be Twitter is now an engineered psychological warfare weapon tailored for me, where I'm like, shit, I need to go buy a couple 24 packs of water, you know?
Yeah, that's the question that I feel like I would get asked a lot when I was explaining to people during the months I was doing this and, you know, subjecting myself to these video streams and comment sections. And I think I don't want to say conversations, because the conversations I had with people in the communities were overall neutral and pleasant. And I should add as a caveat, I didn't really get to feature like the interviews and conversations with people like Mark Sargent and other flat earth documentary makers and like 5G consciousness awareness, whatever that Instagram page is. It's super popular and everything. I didn't really get to have those.
The Love is One. That's the Love is One group, I think. The 5G consciousness.
That guy with the beard. That's his thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Love has won. That's him.
Yeah.
Totally. I didn't really get to incorporate those into the final like work of Apophenic Realism as much as I wanted to, just because I was letting the materials of the research guide the shape of the project more than like my aesthetic direction. And it just didn't work out that way. So I do consider this to be a sort of like beginning, like a first prototype or proof of concept, if you will. But yeah, going back to your question, did it, you know, begin to chip away at, you know, any sort of hesitancy that I might have had? I think that I don't want to give you a simple answer here. I don't want to say just, you know, yes or no.
Yeah.
But rather that it made me just I was forced in a position where I had to give due respect and just look every little detail up and check your work. It's like when you are doing simple math and it's like 2 times 5 and you're just like, you pull out the calculator just to be sure, you know.
Yeah.
Just if that metaphorically even fits here, but it did make me kind of go into the nuts and bolts of everything as to, well, what could be feasible, what has been a historical precedent in the past, that might suggest that this is going on or something like that. So I did kind of go into a lot of those questions, and so that does tend to muddy the waters a little bit. And so that's why I'm not giving that like yes or no. I'm being dodgy with that intentionally.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, what were the mechanics of cloud seeding in Vietnam, right? Like, it
thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Operation Popeye is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Where the U.S. actually had a concerted effort and plan. It was an operation. It actually happened, where we would use silver iodide and these devices, and we would drop them from airplanes and cloud seed, basically, to have these like little silver iodide particles and mist that would then connect with the low-lying humidity in the clouds and basically like retain water in certain areas, so that clouds would form more rapidly, and therefore it would induce a higher likelihood of heavy rainfall or just rainfall in general. And so after a while of doing that, basically the US discovered that, like, yeah, we can seed clouds, but it's completely uncontrollable because you're like looking, it's like the difference between weather and climate, where climate is so much more large scale than like a localized weather pattern or something like that. They thought that they could do this and use the weather as a weapon. And in fact, the original research paper that started the whole chemtrail conspiracy theory, that was I can't remember if they claimed that it was leaked or declassified in 1996. It was called Weather as a Force Multiplier. Let me get the full name of that. Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. So basically, we have 13 months until this becomes a reality.
Right.
But yeah, in Vietnam, they would do that, and the U.S.'s judgment was, yeah, it can flood the entire north Vietnam, but it also floods the south, and it's not only ruining the communist rebel or Vietnamese trails and trade routes, it's ruining our trails and trade routes and positions as well. It's just completely uncontrollable. So that was during the Vietnam War. There's updated versions of this used by countries like Saudi Arabia, where they want to induce rain to, either for agricultural or industrial reasons, generate rain in a given area. I know that a lot of farmers and people doing large scale agriculture experiment with this on small scale, where you have these almost like cannons. They call them that, but they basically just launch silver iodide, and there's other techniques besides silver iodide, but that's the one that I'm most familiar with. But it exists, is the point. And so there was a precedent historically for people to say, hey, we should ring the alarm bell about this. The problem it turned into like a complicated situation, and in some areas a problem, when people took that precedent and took that possibility and ran with it and said, this is a fact. And then the claims got stretched and exaggerated from there. And so now every plane that you see that has a contrail is with the government or some sort of organization that's killing us.
That kind of brings, I wanted to ask before if you ran into much like mysticism in this, because I feel like that always happens. Like at some point in a conspiracy theory's development, it hits the sort of religious impulse somewhere. Like something like 9/11, for example, like it doesn't take too deep into the waters to see where it's like this was a ritual, like a mass ritual, like that kind of theory. How does that crop up in the chemtrails thing? Did you see that?
I did, yeah. I would be, hard pressed to be put on the spot and think of a popular internet age conspiracy theory that doesn't bleed into that. you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd see that a lot. I saw some really interesting crossovers. I know, like we just referenced, Love Has Won, I believe is their name. They had a really interesting belief that's almost like like the bastard child of like what Jacques Vallée would maybe want to bring upon the world, where you'd have people who believe in extraterrestrials of some sort, and you know, lo and behold, we look up in the sky, there's an odd shaped cloud, that's their ship, but it's a spiritual or holographic representation coming from a different dimension, spiritually bestowing upon us messages of X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And so you would see a lot of that. A lot of people would use more coded or personalized terminologies for it. Like there's the tail of the dragon. There's, you know, this sort of like sea creature language that they would use and put on it. But it was all kind of like circling the drain of it's some sort of extraterrestrial ship. But yeah, like what you were asking, some of these people had a concept of ship that was different than like a materialist technological ship. It was like this interdimensional type of portal or hologram or some sort of illusion, and that, you know, they're doing this to help clear the sky of chemtrails and absorb the trails into the cloud matrix, and, you know, help us achieve blue sky and sunlight and everything. The mystical, spiritual, and more like that end of the esoteric part of the chemtrail community, I think varies a lot more even in their explanations and beliefs than the more like materialist people who would just simply say like it's the government or some secret organization or cabal or something like that, you know.
I like the people who are like, so is it almost like a sort like a divination or something, where they're kind of like looking at the shapes of these things and like reading fate in it or something?
Yeah, you'd see a lot of that too. And the thing that I saw the most, actually, now that you bring that up, is people claiming that they were either A, conjuring the clouds, or B, bursting the chemtrails. And so you're going into like the orgone crystal, orgone cannon, cloud bursting cannon, those types of people. They would use vinegar and orgone crystals and rudimentary like EMF radio technology, where they would literally just like wind copper around like some simple circuit board that had a current and put it in like a clay plant potter and aim it at the sky, and they would sit out there and or leave it out there, or they would do a ritual like very intense chanting sometimes, all different kinds of techniques. But yeah, they would see messages, they would believe that they're bringing it in, and they would claim that they're clearing the chemtrails out. It really depends on the person and what they personally believe. But yeah. A lot of expressions of like agency come into play here.
Yeah, I noticed that in the sound pieces, and the sound pieces are great too. It was interesting to hear you talk about because they sound composed. You know, like there's kind of still a sound poetic flow to them. But yeah, I did notice that people were within the pieces, the recordings. People were talking about using black vinegar, right, and to ward off the chemtrails, and I guess somebody else was talking about seeing portals and stuff. But yeah, that's really fascinating. I mean, I hate to do probably the lowest hanging fruit analogy I could think of is that it almost sounds like it's out of a William Gibson book, that it's like this spiritual organ fighting from the ground of like airplanes releasing chemtrails, you know, like it's that weird kind of reminder of how strange the present is, that you don't need to create some fiction of the future, that we truly live in a strange time, I guess. But.
Yeah.
Do you get into like Wilhelm Reich much? Like, are they like sort of interested in him, or is it more just like the orgone as its own kind of substance that's kind of divorced from its creator?
probably for the general majority of people who are participating in this sort of cloud bursting type of chemtrail engagement, they want it to be passive so they can go about their lives unbothered by it. Mm-hmm. So I would assume the latter, where it's a little bit divorced from a more like I don't want to say informed. I don't mean that in like a disparaging way.
Sure.
I just like it's not so like historicized, or they want the solution and they want to implement it and they want to go about their lives unbothered by whatever complications the chemtrails, bring upon them, like brain fog, mind control, gloom, anything like that.
Was there a lot of like in the people that you kind of surveyed, effective treatment? Like did the clearing of the chemtrails or knowing about it or like somehow acting on this knowledge, did that heal anybody? Like, did you see that?
Well, I didn't really come across anyone who claimed to have like a chronic illness that was caused by chemtrails, but there are the vast majority of the videos are them kind of shaking their fist at the heavens, basically, where they are powerless. They can't control anything that's going on. And then you have a small portion of the people and a small portion of the videos where people see like the sun peek out from behind the clouds, or they film a little bit and it cuts and they're like, now it's 6 hours later, the sky is a little bit more clear. What I have been doing, my rituals have been working, as everyone can see. And so everyone would kind of rally together in the comment section of those videos, and they would get more engagement, if you will. And then because that actually provides fertile ground for like, what did you do? What worked for you? And how can I do that too? Like whether it's playing certain frequencies. That was a really interesting, like solfege tones, like just really simple solfege tones. And you can find some pretty, I actually have, I have a really long, extensive playlist on YouTube, a private playlist of like chemtrail bursting frequencies. And so
that sounds nice. It's a sound bath.
Some of them are nice, and some of them are like really, really harsh, like real intentionally. So like, they're like, this is scientifically
right.
What, or, through divination, this is what I have discovered to be the frequency that bursts them, or the combination of frequencies. And so actually in the piece, the Apophenic Realism frequency cloud, I'm forgetting the name of my own frequency cloud operations, the first piece of the two, the tones that you hear are generated from those cloud bursting tones.
I thought so, yeah.
I didn't use any, just simply ripped from like their Rockfin or band videos. I just used like really simple sine generators and other similar things to get like really pure sine waves at those exact frequencies that they said worked for them. And then I kind of used those semi-compositionally to complement the specific people who use them themselves, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's cool. Was there, maybe changing a little bit on the conversation, just in the general sort of investigation of conspiracy subcultures, did you come across anything that particularly disturbed you? This has happened to me a few times where I just had to like sort of stop and turn around and just not go in that direction again.
Yeah, I think that I had to have a hard reset and a hard break once the project was done and submitted and published on Do Not Research. And I was telling people, I'd go out to hang with friends or go to a show or an event and catch up with people, and I would be telling them, I'm kind of in a really negative place right now. I think that I've been surrounded by some really interesting people, some beautiful minds, but also incredibly negative self-recursive thought patterns, hate speech, incredible prejudice, xenophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, let's own this group or this group, that kind of online personality. And if you can take the most vitriolic stuff that you can maybe imagine seeing on YouTube or Instagram or even X, and multiply that tenfold in a completely unregulated and unhinged media platform ecosystem, that's kind of what you're exposing yourself to a lot. And so what it does is it creates this climate of fear, doubt, and guilt too, that you're letting, you're in the few, it is like an esoteric circle to be in. You're in that circle, you're in the know, and therefore you have a responsibility to continue going deeper. Otherwise, this is going to steamroll the entire world, and whether you believe the forces of evil will take over or the elites will continue doing X, Y, or Z to the general population or what have you, you bear the mantle of responsibility now that you know. And that's kind of this general unspoken sentiment that gets shared. And so a lot of people spiral into fear and paranoia. And I say that carefully. I don't associate conspiratorial thinking with paranoid thinking. I think that's a subset style of conspiratorial thinking, and this kind of relates back to a more meta level conversation about conspiracies. I think that, and we can go into this maybe later if you guys would like, but one of the things that I strongly feel about conspiracy theories, regardless of what I'm saying right now, of how negative and just out of touch and inappropriate they can manifest as sometimes, is their overgeneralization as being just overly paranoid or overly this or that, that's led to their stigmatization. And it kind of facilitates them being cut out of popular discourse and popular media platforms, and then they go into these self-reinforcing communities where it just spirals and gets worse. And I wasn't allowed to say this, so therefore my beliefs are confirmed. And study after study shows that people will double down when they believe that the powers that be are censoring them for speaking the truth, and so it's not necessarily helping the cause for pulling these people out of certain thought patterns, or maybe exposing them to information that they otherwise wouldn't be exposed to. They're really self-reinforcing, and so that can be really stressful to kind of jump into as someone Dave. You're it's so funny that you said that you had gotten the David Icke book from Barnes and Noble, because that was literally the biggest secret, getting that at this Barnes and Noble. I was in fifth or sixth grade, and I was like, this seems really cool. And I got my mom to buy it for me when I was this tiny, way too young to be corrupted by this stuff.
Right.
And we went on this beach trip, and I brought it with me, and I just had my nose in that thing the entire time, and it really changed me.
Yeah,
and
Mom,
so,
did you know fluoride's in the water?
that would be the least of her worries.
Yeah, right.
The stuff, the claims that are made in there with the blood lineages, and oh my gosh. But what I'm getting at is from a very early age, I was exposed to that stuff, and I was through mostly like fear and intrigue and a little bit of like that excited thrill of being in the know when other people aren't. I was really deep into a lot of conspiracy theories, and it took me a while to kind of like click out of some of those trains of thought that are almost like an automatic filtering mechanism that gets built up of this like way of like sense making and like experiencing like patternicity and everything like that. And so when people are stuck in that or encouraging that so heavily in their communities, and you kind of jump into that, it can be like a saltwater shock, really, really stressful and negative. And I feel like that kind of ties into also how it really pipelines a lot of people. It politically radicalizes them, and
for sure.
It's weaponized. I mean, that's
yeah,
psychological warfare. John Birch Society, like, invented a lot of these like fluoride in the water and stuff. I think that comes right out of there. And
isn't there fluoride in the water though?
there is, but I mean the harmful.
Yeah. Well, you would say that you're a tap water drinker.
It's funny. I mean, it's funny. Like, I think some of our criticism at times is like, we did an episode about the biography of William Cooper and talked about William Cooper, and somebody was like, how are you guys hating on, the Godfather? And it's like, we're not. We love it. Like, and there, I mean, the thing that's so potent about conspiracies is that there has to be some truth in it to be effective. Like, I mean, it's weird with chemtrails that like it'll probably end up being some sort of hyperstitional thing where when we have to attack global warming, that we will be geoengineering, and then they'll be like, you see, I told you. But like, I mean, it's also this fertile ground if you're artistic to explore, kind of these fields of connective thinking. And
that's like my whole thing, or
it's a very that explosive sense of pattern recognition. The apophenic is a very potent source of inspiration and even like brainstorming or something. But I think that's why, as I mentioned before, somebody like Robert Anton Wilson is so foundational to so many people because the Discordians played so many games and had that trickster element towards conspiracy culture, but he also kind of gave this roadmap that you can enter the chapel perilous, but you have to remember where the exit is to get out, because I think belief is kind of what affirms people into falling down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
Yeah. I really appreciate specifically how you said that artists are specifically well equipped and valuable in this sort of engagement with conspiracy subcultures and conspiratorial thinking, because that's a huge like underlying reason for me melding my, I guess, like personal experiential history and interest with conspiracy theories and my understanding of how significant and important and widespread and influential they are nowadays, to my background as an artist and researcher too. And by that, I guess, I feel like involving cultural and media like studies and people who work in culture and media in conversation with conspiracies is so important for like a number of different reasons. One of the main ones being that it can work in like discussion through metaphors and tropes and like different sorts of imageries which is really important for conspiracy theories and like narrative structures, narrative building.
Yeah.
Without like stereotyping conspiracies and conspiracists as much as maybe like an academic endeavor might. And I strongly disagreed with almost every academic that I read and have read in their characterizations of what conspiracy theories actually are.
For sure.
In my life, and especially while doing this particular short project. I can go into that later, but like thinking laterally is so important when engaging with this type of stuff, because that's the essence of drawing certain parallels within conspiratorial thinking. Like it helps you do it more accurately and like equitably distinguishing like the different styles within conspiratorial communities and theories, because there's a variety. There's a huge variety, and there's lots of stark differences, even like within one particular theory, like the chemtrails, like what we were talking about. And I think that also there's like a severe like dearth, like understudied representation of like the internet-based conspiracy theories, and more broadly like the internet's effect on conspiracy theories, because of course they've existed since before antiquity. As far as we know, they can go back to like Athens and everything. But like the poetics of lateral and nonlinear thinking are incredibly powerful in this, and I think that like artists and creatives are in a strong position to leverage that to help the public have a better understanding and a better navigation of conspiracy theories when confronted with them. So like looking at them anthropologically as kind of like an inevitability almost throughout history, context depending, of course. Like there are some historical conditions that will lead to more likelihood of there being developing conspiracy theories and everything like that, of course. But like doing that, looking at it historically, like as an anthropological inevitability, without like projecting any sort of like top-down diagnosis, such as like, you know, all religious events were just extraterrestrial contacts. Like it's easy for you to sit in the present time and project back and say, well, I have a hunch that this could be true. And then you look at a few instances where some parallels line up and there's some really strong synchronicities, and that may be valid and that may be true. But it's like, I think a little bit extra to say all must be X, Y, or Z. And that's just one example off the top of my head, like not to single that out, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's the way that I look at it is like involving those sort of like that sort of like artistic and creative like explication of conspiratorial thought, and like distinguishing the styles and doing it like respectfully and kind of in unison with it. It's all like for the betterment of having like a multidimensional discourse around it, and situating our own investigations into like how conspiracies have consciously or subconsciously how conspiracists have consciously or subconsciously situated themselves in their own times, and what made them think that there's some conspiracy going on. So yeah. I don't want to reduce everything to like historicizing. That's not the goal,
right?
How I frame conspiracy.
I think it's really important stuff to point out. I think very well said, like very well formulated. It's because there is something like very effective about applying the sort of conspiracist approach, even though it's a diverse approach, but you could still call it an approach, to like, for me, for its poetry, for you, like the sound art, even just like a subject matter. There's like something inside of it that is so potent. And I think that what you just described describes that pretty well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to liquefy it too much, but I mean, there's also the thing that like art a lot of the time feels like a conspiracy. Like the evocation of art is kind of a conspiracy. And then, even more cliche, but it's true, is that your senses are conspiring against you all of the time. Like, you're perceiving the world in a way that it's not actually occurring, but your senses are telling you a story. So all of that kind of goes into the construction of artworks, whether it be a painting or a film or a poem or a piece of music, is kind of suspending the senses or creating an environment for the senses in a way that is a conspiracy. So I think this is kind of why that medium can be so conducive for artists. And even, I mean, the kind of like the paranoid state, I'm not associating paranoia with conspiracy necessarily, but I also think that like that kind of state is something that's recurrent in a lot of art as well,
Yeah, that's true.
What I mean, I'm curious now. What do you think about the whole like shift in the ufological narrative? Have you been dialed in on this at all? Like the non-human intelligence story that is unfolding before us?
My biggest concern is how much money the German HKW, HKW, has taken from Black Pentagon money to cultivate a global community of impressionable artists who were at the ready, already susceptible to adopting this language of non-human entities and extra-human relationalities because the language dovetailing between those two communities is so fascinating and quite funny to me that my interpretation, my sensorial conspiracy of my body can't escape thinking that whenever I'm watching any of these like congressional hearings or reading articles about, David Grush or, hot takes by Elizondo or Greer or anything like that, is the funniest part has been the language.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's been such a shift too.
Right.
It's interesting to like live through a moment where the language in like a culture that you've been paying attention to, like is forced to like make these changes, and like the awkward sort of leaps that happen, like seeing like one by one people start to say UAP instead of UFO, and like I'm just not going to do it. I'm going backwards instead and like calling them discs. It's a really interesting thing to see happen. And it kind of happened with conspiracy stuff in general. Like, I guess it was around 2015 or 16, around the time of that election, when it kind of like broke through the surface and in this like sort of disgusting, like fish-like form broke out from like the underworld. And like suddenly we had this like pop culture conspiracy theory thing that like became like almost regulated, like with all the bannings and stuff that you were talking about, but also like it started mutating and becoming more dangerous. Whereas before it was, I kind of like came up on this stuff. Like, do you know the website Godlike Productions or like Above Top Secret? They're just like
Above Top Secret. Yeah.
They're just like the late 2000s, like boards, like forums where like anyone could post anonymously and it's just stuff like whatever. A lot of it when I was looking was like about Obama because he had just been elected, or like natural disasters were very big back then, like because of 2012 coming soon, stuff like that. But like it's been so fascinating to watch this shift from whatever that was which was more
It's fringier. And
fringier, but like also less centralized somehow, even though it's not centralized now. It's like maybe it's more nodal now or something, whereas before it was more like soupy or something. Like they're just like,
I think
yeah.
the value, like the literal market value of conspiracies has been exposed in a way, so that the UAP thing is kind of shaking off the scrub of UFO, the past UFO narrative, obviously, but I mean, we can expand on that too, and I'm sure you're interested too. But also, the non-human intelligence language for me seems far more important because what you're projecting onto that is far stranger, and it's still questionable for me in terms of what I'm.
It's a weird one.
Yeah, it's odd.
I would like to hear, not in the sense where I can't see it or that I disagree in any way. I'd like to hear maybe why you personally think that the language is more, I guess, not prescient, but I guess more important, out of curiosity, because I have a bias here, and that's kind of like maybe my cards have shown, but my cat is screaming to get in. I don't know if it's coming through, but I might let her in if she continues. But my bias has just been this like fascination of exactly what you just articulated like a minute ago, where you said that there are financial interests that have developed not out of just the phenomena of potential UFO existence. We've all known that those have been tied to capital, to corporate interests, to the powers that be, security, the dreaded word that shuts out conversations in government hearings and everything like that. Everything's framed under national security, this and this. But not in the phenomena as a whole, but in the alleged or self-proclaimed like pro-disclosure public, where they have taken advantage of eager communities of people who seek the public revelation of any hidden or suppressed knowledge or technology or what have you. And those people, those public figures being disingenuous, I think they're the biggest setback and the biggest red herring for any sort of like genuine disclosure efforts. And they distract the conversations. I think that they get they establish a sort of like low precedent for like what we should settle for as far as like information or disclosures or revelations or what have you, or even language shifting. Like going back to the language, I mean, I guess they're tied together. So maybe at the end of the day, it's the liberation of one, necessitates that of the other. But these people, these public figures who have a sort of like selfish interest in saying like, I possess this knowledge, buy my book, come to my seminars, watch this documentary I've made, embed yourself within the narrative that I am giving to you and talk about this phenomena in the words that I am giving to you. And I want to position myself at the forefront of these movements. Those people, I think are the biggest distraction and one of the biggest hurdles to be overcome in all of this. But they're a perfect expression of how everything is really, how everything in like the UFO, UAP, and disclosure communities has kind of evolved in the first place. And that's within the realm of capital interests. Like you can't escape it. And one of the things that might I can name names. I think one of the worst offenders is Stephen Greer, personally. This sounds like such a polemic, I know, and forgive me or edit it out. I'm sorry for any listeners who are big fans. That's cool if you are. I really appreciate a lot that he's done. It's not to say that I don't. I just have a more specific focus on maybe overcoming some specific problems that I am recognizing here. And they couch these sort of claims of wanting to like democratize truth and be planetary custodians and have these like universal benefits like free energy and all these sort of like universal basic XYZ that are so amazing that they are literally like exoplanetary. Like you can't even imagine it, but they're going to help. Like they know secrets, they're withholding stuff. Come to them. Oh, you found out stuff? Great. Send your people to them and they will take care of it. And they frame it as we will take the brunt of it. Like, they won't assassinate me. I have too much leverage and this and this. But in reality, they want to hold more cards to have better content and leverage for more financial gain in this. But anyways, about their language of like democratizing truth and being planetary custodians, it's like they have all this rhetoric and it like resonates with like the disempowered people, right? Which is your conspiracy audience by and large. And at the same time, they reject any sort of like vision of what social or political structures would like necessitate actually implementing these like technologies or truths or like universal benefits that we would gain from having like alien information or technology or what have you. I use the word alien there. I'm sorry if I'm outdated.
Yeah, I mean, like the concept of Tesla free energy, like the atmospheric energy, is completely incongruent to the type of technology we now use. Correct? Like if we used that kind of energy projection, wouldn't it just like scramble our computers and shit? Like I'm not going tech mode here, but from my understanding, like that.
Probably it could function as an EMP.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. There might be a connection lag. I might have just interrupted you.
Yeah, no, you were just lagging a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think I've heard in short, like somebody I read somebody just shot that down immediately. It was like the circulation of the story of the what is it, the Warburton Tower that Tesla was constructing, funded by J.P. Morgan, that was supposed to send wireless energy to a naval ship, and then he found out what he was doing and he destroyed the tower, and that kind of serves as this myth of the potential of free energy. But from what I understand, that type of technology is incongruent with our telecommunication systems. Oh, we just lost him real quick. I'll pause for a sec.
Add to it.
Yeah,
dude, they shut us down. See that we must be on.
Shut us down.
We were talking way too much about chemtrails and more gallons because they shut us down.
I thought I had more gallons once.
Oh, Ben, that's the most like. That's the pinnacle of like hypochondria. Not to offend anybody if they've had more gallons. That correction, that tower was called the Warden Cliff Tower. I had to look it up in the break there.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, somebody like Greer to me fits the mold of how we've understood ufology for, the past 100 years or whatever. I mean, not that long, but about almost. And when I talk about the language and the shift in the language, what's most interesting for me is the whole like tech adaptation of the ufological question, and specifically the books of Diana Pasulka who I'm not sure if you've read or encountered her books. But that seems to be a new element of finance that has entered this realm, and whether they are tampering with an arena to, do certain things while saying they're doing other things, or if it is, I don't know. I mean, and if it is some genuine exploration of ontological concepts of non-human intelligence. I also think on its surface that there has to be elements of writing into regulation about artificial intelligence, right? I mean, like, if there's a bill that just got passed through Congress that is specifically talking about non-human intelligence, but then again, why wouldn't it just be written about artificial intelligence? Does it allow like some sort of vague legality that it can approach different things with this language is what has me curious. But apparently
that bill happened, you're saying?
What
that bill is something that passed recently?
Yeah, this is the Chuck Schumer bill.
Okay.
Yeah. That, says countlessly non-human intelligence. Also, it also talks about crash retrieval programs, not as if they are a historical question, but a historical fact. And this is a bill that passed through Congress. So, yeah, this current paradigm of ufology, if you are to, I feel like there's different schools of thought, and I'm not specifically, I don't think Ben is either. We're not really specifically in any particular school of thought concerning the ufological question. I don't have any answers myself, but I'm certainly interested in it. But the state of it now and the legitimization of it calls into question what exactly this means. Like what non-human intelligence, like that's not saying extraterrestrial, that's not saying something from another planet. What is that? Like that to me is interesting. That's an interesting choice of language that I'm not sure what exactly is being projected onto that.
And you looked like you were gonna.
I've been thinking for the last 20 minutes or so, David Icke is for the children.
Yeah.
Oh,
he is actually. I mean, he kind
died,
of
actually.
His daughter just died.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, like last week.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Not his children. I mean, he's for the kids,
Is he even a grifter? Because like he actually took so much smoke that like it doesn't seem worth it. I know that he gets paid.
He's like banned from like the European Union.
Yeah, we have allegedly. I don't know, but
I think that he's talked about it. But
yeah. But I mean, like he did get so much. He got killed in British media that it's like. But I guess he's makes a ton of money from his books and stuff. I mean.
Yeah, I think
Seminars.
like 4% of people believe in like the Ike variant of some sort of reptilian agenda in the United States alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is millions of people. And he rakes
Could that
it in.
be true?
I mean, that's a study I saw as far as, I wasn't asked.
Right.
I didn't take part.
But what's it mean to believe that, Like, is that like a belief that drives people's decisions?
It's nearly primordial, though. The reptilian thing is like goes back to our earliest religions and stuff. I mean, there's the Ophidian thing.
Demons.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thing, too. Yeah, with non-human intelligence, there's AI, but there's also the congressional religious constituency who are literally like, these are demons. We believe this. We need legislation, and we need this to be exposed. Like,
they're either demons, or if they can't get away with that, they'll have to say something like, this is Chinese technology or something. There's always something. But I think that the question that you articulated a second ago is really important about a potential like what could be if any, a potential psyop or diversion of incorporating said language of non-human X, Y, or Z, specifically non-human intelligence or what have you in this context. But yeah, it could be, if some might say, if they're true heads and they want to push deeper and deeper, they could say that the Pentagon, the Air Force, and the Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, and military contractors that are all in cahoots in some capacity, they're capitalizing off of the recent surge in popularity of artificial intelligence and the recent leaps and bounds that technology has had, and its popularity in the media, and that if they can squeeze by saying something and nothing at the same time while potentially having that language vaguely tie into that concurrent development of AI, then it could be a distraction that successfully dissuades people from going too deep into researching the government or military contractors' connections into UFO phenomena in any capacity. So I can totally see that argument being made in these circles, where the whole premise of much of the ufology disclosure community and disclosure advocates has been basically, we're not being told the whole truth, and there have been red herrings and there have been false distractions put out that kind of take advantage of the times, whether it's the political climate or other technologies being developed at the time. So I could totally see that being a possibility. Whether or not I believe in that, not necessarily, no, but that doesn't mean that I am like atheistic or antagonistic to the idea that that's happening. I think that it's a really good point that you bring up, how the vagueness surrounding that language and the coincidence of it arising at the same time as it does in the AI developments is an important thing to note. Do I think that there's necessarily a connection between the two? Do I think that AI is extraterrestrial or God or mystical in that sense? No, not necessarily. I think that this language, it's my personal opinion or inclination of the most, what would be a more likely, I guess, possibility would be this language is just simply being weaponized as some sort of distraction.
It's just jargon. What is biologics? Did you, with the Grush stuff? They had biologics. What are you talking about, man?
It could be as rudimentary as RNA.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you don't know, and so I think that they have a really interesting ploy, and they're casting some unique spells that hitherto only artists have been capable of casting, where they play with language and poetics in such interesting ways that amazes and confuses people into being impressed.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
They're sorcerers. Yeah, it's true.
What about with the AI thing? For a while, even before this current AI moment, there was this sort of small but vocal contingent in UFO studies of people who sort of thought of the gray aliens as artificial humanoids, or they're often conflated with the grays in particular are as these sort of artificial or soulless beings seeking the human soul, that that sort of thread. And then that sort of isn't as popular now that AI has kind of come to the popular consciousness as
I feel like it's still I think
that
is still recurrent.
Yeah, maybe you're right, but
that there's sort of sentinels. That's kind of a way around the point people make where how could something travel across galaxies and get here in a lifetime, and it's well, they sent these biological robots.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't really have a question about that, but that's what I was thinking
You're like, it's
about
freaking
these.
cool though, man.
It's
It's like, don't you
it's
think
not cool. It's
don't you think that's
scary.
freaking cool and scary?
I do want to ask.
That's where we devolve into the Joe Rogan podcast. Where
Yeah.
From here on out, the rest of this chat, we can only bring up things, no questions, just cool shit.
I love doing cool shit.
Isn't that fucking weird, man?
Don't you think it's weird that? No. Do you have like a? This is a Joe Rogan level, allegedly, question.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite ufologist?
I love the misuse of allegedly on this show. Is just like that's one of our classics. We're so afraid of somebody like coming after us. We're just like,
I can also imagine, Ben, I think it was you who had this predicament a little bit ago.
Probably.
Where someone said something, they're like, yeah, people who believe this, well, sorry if anyone actually believes, like, for anyone who's listening who does, it's like running into those predicaments while talking about quite unconventional beliefs and conspiracies and ideologies and metaphysics and everything. Like, running into that problem, I can imagine happens a lot with you guys.
Yeah.
well, I think that you like on the show, when we're talking about this stuff, you're talking about it in a certain way, and we're kind of like dissecting conspiracies and the mechanics of what makes a conspiracy, and it's a little bit of a critique of a conspiracy, but like I honestly don't want to dilute the mental space that people are in when they are believing a conspiracy, because I experience paranoia, I've experienced extreme fear and paranoia from conspiracies that I'm believing at a time. So I think when you break down conspiracies, I think that people get sensitive about it, and they think that we're being like debunkers, but we're certainly not debunkers. I think we're interested in the makeup of this stuff, because it is something that like it's like an event horizon, like we're just drawn into it, and you have to start to question why that is. What's the cause of that?
I've never interpreted anything or any stance that you guys have had on your show or any interactions you've had with any guests or conversations as being, debunkers or anything like that. I'm of the similar stance where I think that skepticism should be applied in both directions, 360 degrees, everything. Just, what's the point if you're not applying it equally to everything? I know it's easier said than done, and it's quite a cliche to say it out loud, but yeah, that's really how I feel. And I worried coming onto the show that, I might be perceived as someone who is like the debunker type, because I, will immerse myself really deeply into certain beliefs and communities and conversations without necessarily taking a stand in that. And that's a situation where that came up actually in some interactions with people during the research phase of Apophenic Realism, where I'd be talking to people and I would never mention my stand ever. And this is, I think, a really interesting thing to point out that I want people to know, is that I never mentioned what I personally believe when it comes to certain things. I don't think it's very relevant. I wouldn't hide it if they asked. No one asked. Every single person, no matter if they're like a small Instagram page, a small YouTube account, a small poster on some band website or whatever, or they have a huge following, and they've made, documentaries that have gotten grant support from people or whatever. No one asked. Every single person assumed that I was with the cause. Whatever that cause is varied on the person, which is really, really interesting for me. But they were always just like, thank you for doing the good work and for putting the word out there and for standing up for this and putting the truth out. That was like unequivocally the stance and the sentiment that they expressed to me. And I never said anything. I was just like, hey, I put it all on I'm like, I'm an artist. Here's my website. You can look at this. You can listen to this. Here's me on social media. This is me. I'm interested in band content and how like it's affected, people who have been banned and the communities and everything like that, and how it's happening in a more rapid pace, and what it's kind of looking at to have this like balkanization of the internet, basically, as a side effect of this. And that's all I said. I was like, can I ask, have you had anything banned, or I've seen that this was taken down, or you host on this website, or this or this or this, or you only do torrents? What was that like? What was banned? Can you share it with me? Like, I'm an artist. I want to make a weird project with some of the audio that is maybe involved in this. And they were all just like, you're on my side, you get it, like you're on the forces of good, and you're here to expose the truth. And so that was a really interesting thing that I experienced doing that as well. But
you can find this episode in its entirety and more exclusive content at patreon.com/consensusunreality.
From your audio into this episode.
Yeah, of course.
As well.
Of course.
But we will also, of course, direct listeners of this episode to the piece itself, or the pieces. Trying to find the link here. Do you have the link handy?
Yeah, you can get everything on my website. I'll give you the link here, but I'll say it out loud. It's just carmelopampillonio.info. CarmeloPampillonio.info. And you can go find the Apophenic Realism information there. You can find the link where you can read the full essay on the Do Not Research Substack. It's all there for free. You can listen to it on my website, or you can listen to it on the Do Not Research Substack. It was published in the Do Not Research 2022-2023 book, and it's pretty short, straightforward, not intimidating. And hopefully it will be the first of a series of kind of media surveys and studies relating to conspiracy theory media topologies.
Awesome. Yeah. And I see you have
Very
this
cool.
on Bandcamp as well.
Yeah. It links to the Bandcamp. It links to Do Not Research. So you can, stream it from wherever you want.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I highly recommend listening to these pieces. They're really cool, and they kind of, the first piece fits into that world of sound poetry kind of stuff, but it has that extra context, which we've poured over for the last 3 hours as well. So highly recommend checking that out, and maybe these people will come across some of your past projects as well that we've mentioned slightly, but some really interesting stuff I've been seeing you do over the years. So it's really cool to talk, and we'll have to have you on again, because I'm sure that enough is going to happen in the world that there will be more to break down in the conspiracy milieu.
I would love that. Yeah, there's a lot more details that can be kind of gone into with pretty much everything that we talked about tonight. But yeah, it's been great. Great banter, great research, great deep dives and questions, and I appreciate both of you taking 3 hours at this point. And it's great to chat with you both.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Awesome.
Of course.
All right, man. Well, have a good night. And thanks for listening. As always, we'll catch you next time. And happy holidays, if we're definitely not going to be back before that. So have a happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Ciao.
The artist's not playing. Geo interfering. Climate fakers.
coming down. They need to shoot these guys down.
Something big is coming, guys. We know the dragon's gonna smack its tail one of these times. But there are all sorts of things out there yesterday and today. That's like a laser connecting to the sun, trying to, and then it did, and then that loop came up. There's definitely something going on, and just letting you know. I don't get excited easily, you know that. That thing's huge. Okay. All kinds of stuff today.
Oh yeah, check it out. Give it 2 minutes. See that shit?